What I'm trying to do in the next 25 minutes is to squeeze a topic that needs at least 5 hours into a very quick summary, and I'll try to give you the perspective on how to connect your ad monetization side into your user acquisition, right? And to make sure that you are maximizing both from together. And it's right for hyper-casual games that have 90% of the revenue from ads, but it's also right for every other game that has 25% from the ads, for revenue from ads, and needs to balance between these two edges and maximize both sides. So let's start with today. What makes a game a good business? Because in the past it was clear, a game with a good retention or even high LTV is a good business, but I think that the equation has changed a little bit in the past, let's say 2 years since hyper-casual rise so much. And today there are 4 different things that you would consider when you are analyzing a game and decide whether this is a good business or not, right? The first thing will be retention and LTV, which are basically connected to each other. But what many today check and monitor when they decide if this game is going to be a good business is what is the CPI and IPM. IPM, by the way, for whoever doesn't speak the same language, is installs per 1,000 impressions or the conversion of your campaign, right? It's mainly CVR, CTR, or how well you are making installs out of your campaigns. And today, the equation or the metrics are pretty clear. A good business is a game that manages to have higher LTV than the needed CPI to buy across many, many apps. And we are going to analyze these two sides of the equation and to see how to connect these two to optimize your and scale your business as much as possible. So on the one hand, we have the LTV, right? The LTV of the game depends mainly on the retention and the ARPDAU that you are generating from the game. On the other hand, you have your user acquisition or marketing scale, which mainly depends at your advertiser eCPM, right? As your eCPM as an advertiser is higher, then your user acquisition, your marketing effort will be more significant. And your advertiser eCPM depends on 2 main things. One is how much you are paying per install, right? 40 cents, $5, whatever it is. And second is your IPM, is how well are you converting. If you have a 20 cents CPI and 50 IPM, 50 installs per 1,000 impressions, you have an advertiser eCPM of $10. And this what will determine what will be the scale of your user acquisition. And we are going to look how we optimize these two sides and how we connect between what you are generating from the monetization side to how you're optimizing your marketing. Let's start with a smaller topic that I'm not going to deep dive into, and is how you are optimizing your LTV, or where do you start before you move to the marketing activity. So in general, it's pretty clear. LTV depends on 2 things, retention and ARPDAU. I'm going to leave aside retention. This is your job. You know the best, much better than me, how to generate or how to build the game with the best retention out there. This is what you are doing the best. ARPDAU, and I'm speaking now only from the ads perspective. I'm not speaking about IAP, which is a whole different world. At the end of the day, your ARPDAU depends on 2 things. Because in order to generate revenue from your users in the game using ads, you have 2 steps to do. You have step number 1 is to convert the users into impressions, right? What is the impression user rate? How well are you converting users into impression? And the second stage will be how well are you converting the impressions into revenue and dollars, because this is what you are generating. On the first hand, you can look at it per ad unit. There is different ways to optimize the implementation of ad unit, right? For rewarded ads, like rewarded video, like offer wall, the way to optimize your impression DAU rate is by how you implement the ads within the game. How visible is it? How many placements you have? What is the reward that you are offering to the users to have? Because here you are playing a different game. You are making the user to choose to watch an impression. You cannot control the impression DAU rate for ad-based, for a user-initiated or rewarded ads. For interstitial, it's different. You are the one to decide what will be the rate between impression and DAU. And this is where you're balancing between the idea of generating higher impression DAU rate as possible to generate revenue, but not hurting your retention too much, because at the end of the day, you are optimizing your total LTV and not your today ARPDAU, and banner is a different question. And you even need to decide if you are going to use it or not. And this is the first step. The second step is how well you are converting these impressions into revenue. And this is a whole new world that we are speaking at, is how you manage your waterfall, right? Today is multiple instances. In few months, it's going to be in a bidding which all mediations platforms, including ironSource, but all others are going in the direction of. And this is how you optimize your ARPDAU. This was the easier part. Now let's see how you take this and you are optimizing your marketing activity or your UA spend and scale. So first of all, this is something that we'll all need to understand, and this is what I said in the beginning. Your scale as an advertiser, the amount of installs, the DAU that you will be able to generate, depends on your eCPM as an advertiser, pretty clear. Here's an example of the metrics that we see in the United States. If you have between $0 to $10 eCPM, you are probably not going to have a lot of scale as an advertiser. If you have between $10 to $30 eCPM in the United States, then you are getting into a very relevant and very scalable business. And at the end of the day, where you're going to be in this graph depends on, as I said, your IPM and your CPI. And this is how we are analyzing these two sides. IPM is mainly depends on your creatives, right? And we're going to see what are the 4 things that we think that are very important to do while you're optimizing your creatives in order to generate the highest IPM as possible, in order to generate the highest eCPM as an advertiser, to get as much scale as possible. CPI, of course, it's connected to your LTV, right? If you are having a better LTV, you can increase your CPI. But let's put it aside. Let's say that for a given CPI, for a given LTV, for a given margin decision to decide for your business, what else can you do with the CPI in order to make sure that you are optimizing until the end? And there is a lot to do, and we are going to touch this as well. I'm starting with the creative side. The first thing that we always recommend to do is to have few creatives type. Never run only with playable. Never run only with video. Never run with only video plus interactive end card. Why? Maybe even because of we see that different ad units see different campaigns working well for them. On rewarded video, in our network, we see that playable usually wins video plus interactive end card. On interstitial, unlike rewarded video, we see that video plus interactive end card or video plus GIF or even only video is working much better than playable. If you are running with only one creative type, you are leaving some of the pie and you are not squeezing what you can out of the traffic and out of the install that you can generate. Number 2, and it's important, even if you have playable and video plus interactive end card live, always challenge them and always add more playables or more creatives, even in the same type, into the data science. Why? Because first, you want to challenge, you want to see if you can find a better creative that's generating higher IPM scale metrics. But also, for many networks, you see that different creatives will work differently on different supply sources. It means that playable V1 will generate the highest IPM in 4 sources, while playable V2 will generate higher IPM in other sources. And having few creatives running, even on the same type, with some of the network will generate you incremental value. Localization, and this is something that we saw pretty clear. Many of the advertisers that are running with ironSource are running with the same campaign globally, worldwide. And once you localize your campaign, and localize is not only language, the basic layer, and maybe the most important one is language, but the second layer will be to culturalize it to the right place, right? If you're running on China, you want to add more red into the campaign, or etc. We see a significant improve in metrics, in IPM, for different markets when you are localizing your ad. For China, I think it's pretty straightforward because, again, English is not always dominated there. But even for France, which you expect that, okay, English, adding French, there is not such a big difference. We see that many times the exact same campaign running on French will generate higher IPM. It will give you, of course, the incremental value and scale. Tip number 4 is refreshments. And what we see many times is that a campaign is generating a very strong IPM, but as times go by, then you see that the IPM is slightly dropping and getting lower and lower, and it's mainly because of that. And this is how we see what is the probability to make an install for a given campaign on a given user, depending on how many times this user watched this campaign already. And we see that if a user watched, let's say, a specific campaign 5 times, the chances that he will make an install on the 6th time or the 7th time is very, very low. And what happens next is that the data science of the network will just stop serving this campaign, right? And this is why it's very important to refresh your creatives, because as time goes by, your total pie or total addressable DAO is getting smaller and smaller because we stop serving your campaign for whoever was not converted so far. Now let's get to the most interesting part and maybe the heart of this presentation is how you optimize your CPI, giving all your monetization and ad revenue data, and how you make sure to squeeze the lemon there. So the first thing that I will say is that make sure that you are measuring the right LTV. Because many times what I see is that different advertisers look only on one revenue source, only on IIP because it's 90-10 or 80-20 in favor of IIP, so I can ignore the 10 or 20%. And this gives the wrong picture on how you should optimize your campaign. This is an example from our user acquisition platform. What ironSource is doing is giving you the IIP revenue and the ads revenue that you get per source. So you'll be able to measure the right LTV and to have the both revenue sources per source being shown and decide upon. The second thing is that it's not only to see what is the revenue that you made from IIP and from ads per each source, it's also building the right LTV curve. Because we see that many times, even if the final value is very similar, the behavior of the curve of the revenue that you are generating from IIP comparing to ads is very different, and combining it into one LTV curve will give you the right ROAS number that you expect, or LTV curve that you expect to see in each day from installs until the last day. The fourth thing that about measuring the right LTV will be you have to have LTV curve per country. Because again, this is an example where you have the same total LTV, final LTV in China and US. But if you will also assume that, hey, if I have the same final LTV, then I have the same day 7 ROAS or LTV percentage and day 15, then you are taking a wrong assumption because we see that the LTV curve looks very, very different between different geos. Number 2 is bid based on ROAS and nothing else. And again, many of the topics here are touching what hyper-casual tend to do. And if you look at what tracking companies provide you today, for instance, they will attribute quality to retention, to number of impressions per user. And at the end of the day, a user with higher retention can have a lower LTV than a user with lower retention. Depends on the session length, depends on how many impressions you watch. Just like IIP, right? You are not measuring the quality by retention, you are measuring the quality by dollars. And even for ad-based games, or games that have some portion of the revenue coming from ads, you should base your ROAS and your quality measurement based on dollars, not based on retention, not based on total impressions that the user generated. And today you have the abilities to measure quality per actual dollars, even for ad-based games. The third important metric, which is again something that I think that more ad-based games are not doing well enough, is to bid differently per source. Why? Because first of all, we see from our numbers that whoever bids differently per source gets much bigger portion of our revenue in the network, or gets much bigger scale. But moreover, if you are not bidding per source and you are bidding 35 cents for all of your sources, you are definitely not squeezing the lemon, right? Because for some sources, the LTV that you can get is 70 cents, and you could have bid much higher and get much higher scale. For other sources, the LTV is much lower than what you bid, and you actually lose money. Because if you are averaging the bid, then you are for sure leaving a lot of money on the table. And one of the important things is, even for ad-based games, is to measure the right LTV and measure the right ROAS per source and bid the right bid per source to make sure that you are maximizing both scale and quality and ROAS. Number 4, which is also a very important, and sometimes it's hard for the advertiser to see it from the advertiser eyes, is know how the waterfall or how the supply or how the monetization works for your good sources. Because many times you get good quality and good volume from a specific source, but you have no idea how well are you running there comparing to other advertisers. And if it's possible for you, again, depends on CPI and IPM, you always want to be the first position from the advertiser perspective. Why? Because big portion of the users watch only the first impression. It means that if you are not being served as the highest eCPM or highest campaign in this specific supply source. It means that you are not even addressing big portion of the users that watch only 1 impressions or 2 impressions and watch only the highest performance advertiser. Besides of this, we know that the IPM of the highest positions is higher compared to the lowest position. It means that if you will climb in the advertising waterfall within a specific network, you'll see that the IPM will go up. Although nothing was changed in the creative, nothing was changed on the supply type, it's just your position in the waterfall, and then it's like a snowball. You are climbing, IPM goes up, you can reduce CPI back down because you already have the first position and you already get the maximum that you can get from this supply source. And number 5 is constantly update. Because what we see many times is that the quality for a given source is also changing by time, right? So if you say, okay, I'm going to measure, I'm going to do whatever you said, I'm going to build the right LTV curve, I'm going to measure dollars and not retention and not impressions, and I'm going to do it per source. I'll look at source A and the quality they get there. I decide what will be the bid and I forget about it for 1 month. You'll see that a lot is changing in 1 month. The quality that you get will change because the user acquisition of the source has changed. New apps are going live that you are ignoring. And if you are not reacting in real time and as fast as possible to all the changes that we see from the supply and from the demand perspective, again, you are for sure not optimizing your potential. And this all takes me to where I think that the future is, and this is what ironSource today is bringing to the table, and I think that this approach will only grow in our industry. And it's to automate everything that's related to connecting ad revenue or even total revenue, ads and IAP, into your marketing and user acquisition. So let me share with you in a nutshell, how are we doing it today? If you are working with our monetization platform, with our mediation, we already measure the user ad revenue that you get per each user and user. On top of that, we get from post-install events your IAP revenue per user or per source. What it helps us to do is to understand exactly by combining these two, both ad revenue per user and IAP per source, not user, is to understand the quality that you get per source. We know that when you are buying from application A, the quality that you get or the average LTV that you get, considering all your revenue sources, is X. When you are buying from application B, it's Y. All I'm saying here is happening automatically. You don't need to do anything. You are working on mediation, you are sharing with us post-install events, and we do all the calculation for you. The next thing that we'll do is not only that we'll understand it, we will also build the curve, the LTV curve, and we'll understand what needs to be your ROAS number per day, right? So even if after we understand the final LTV number, we also understand how this number is being built into during the lifetime of the user. We are doing it, by the way, at the app country level. The next thing that we are going to release in about a month is to do it only on the device level. Again, I'm reminding that everything is going automatically. It means we'll be able to understand what is your LTV or quality per app, per country, per device. Then it can be internet connectivity, it can be operate, it can be many, many other things. And we take all this data that we calculate by our own with our technology, and all we ask for you in return is tell me what is your ROAS goal, right? Take into consideration the margin of the company that you want to have. Take into consideration the K factor, right? This is all data that we don't have, and you are the one to take the decision. Tell me what is your ROAS goal. You want to be day 3, 70%. You want to be day 7, 80%, whatever it is. Give me this. Don't give me CPI. Don't do all the hard work. I will do the hard work and collect everything and calculate it. I need from your end your ROAS goal, and then this is what's going to happen. First of all, we are going to start bidding per source on a smart way, right? Because we know that from app A, this is your quality. From app B, we know the exact quality in dollars, how much LTV, how much revenue you are making. So as long as we get your ROAS goal, we know what the bid that we need to bid per source in order to give you the ROAS goal that you are aiming to have. For new apps that are going live, right, because every day we have many, many apps that are going live, we are going to use taxonomy. Taxonomy, it means that we are looking at who is the publisher, we're looking at the genre, and we predict what will be your quality from this app based on what quality your campaign gets from similar apps, from other apps, from the same publisher, etc. We are going to considering ARPDAU trend, because at the end of the day we are connecting past with future, right? We are saying, hey, in the past month, this was your quality. You want to get to this ROAS in the future, I'm going to bid this number because I predict that the quality will be the same. But we are adding more layers on top of this. If we see that you have a decrease in ARPDAU, then we understand, hey, although this source generated quality X in the past month, probably this quality is going to be 10% lower moving forward, so we are lowering your bid in 10% to make sure that we are matching the future. And although all you give us is ROAS goal day 7, 70% or whatever, we already take actions on day 3 or day 2 or day 4 because we built your ROAS curve. We understand already in day 3 that, hey, we are not going to meet this day 7 goal. Let's lower the bid or increase the bid, depending on what we see on real time. And there is no way to do this process of connecting your monetization side, LTV, data per source, which is very granular and complicated, into your marketing strategy, which is also a very complicated thing. There is no way to do it by human beings, right? Unless you are going to have an army of optimization managers that are going to look at the data every day and change the bids across thousands of apps according to all of these things that are happening on a daily basis. And this is exactly how we try to connect this and to affect 4 out of the 5 things that affect your CPI. We are also working on technology to give you the waterfall position. It means that you will be able to understand that, hey, if you will reduce your ROAS curve by 5%, then you will get X more traffic, and then you can expect to increase your profit. Although the margin is lower, you can increase your profit because of the incremental traffic that you get. So I think that by end of this year, we'll be able to cover all of this on a very automated process that helps everything.
Guys, you have Nadav here, a bit of a guru on both UA and monetization. I think it'd be a crime to let him go without asking him some questions. So what questions we got in the audience? Otherwise, I'm just going to ask him a question. Okay. Right. I want to know, Mr. Nadav, he got married 2 weeks ago, by the way. He should actually be on his honeymoon, but he prefers to talk about LTV. Sad. Really sad. I want to know how accurate your user-level ad revenue data is and how you collect it.
Cool.
Because we have other companies talking about it as well, so I want to know about you.
It's a great question, and as I said, there are different companies that measure user ad revenue in different ways. The way that ironSource is doing it depends mainly on how you structure your waterfall. Let's assume that your waterfall is multiple instances of fixed CPM. Facebook first position $40, AppLovin second position $38, ironSource third position $36. What we look at is the exact impressions that each user watched and the exact value of each impression or which instance served the impression. And this is the most accurate that you can get as long as you are working on a fixed CPM multiple instances waterfall. If you are working on a rev share model, then you are right, it's a bit different, and then there is the installed data which is generating the revenue for you, not the impression data, and then it's not as accurate as an impression data, but it's as accurate as you can get without asking from Facebook to give you the install level data, which is, of course, something that no one will give.
Thanks for the talk. Raheem here from Product Madness. Just a question regarding LTV curves for ad monetization versus in-app purchases. It was interesting that I never thought about it like that. So the 2 charts you showed, is that normally the pattern you see where it's flat lines earlier for UA, or is that just 2 arbitrary ones you draw and it's not as consistent as that?
Just to make sure I understand, you ask if there is big difference between the curve that you get from revenue from IAP and from ads?
Well, I mean, first, is there a difference, which you're making the point it is, but even if there's a difference, like generally how do they trend? Is it drastically different app to app, or do you normally see a certain correlation?
From what we see, there is a big difference because the behavior of the user when he's making a purchase in the store or just being served with ads is very, very different. Usually, the ads LTV curve is much more linear because the users will constantly see ads, so you're constantly building your LTV curve day by day. while IIP is not as linear as you get from ads because it's more once in a while events. But in the case that I saw, there is a big difference. I didn't see many similarities between them. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, dude.
Thanks for your time.